Let's talk about a man who is condemned to die. But here's the twist. It wasn't really for the murder he committed. No, it was for who he was. We're diving deep into the story of the ultimate outsider in Albert Camus' masterpiece, The Stranger. The entire story kicks off with these words, probably one of the most famous and most chilling opening lines in all of literature. And you need to understand, this isn't just a sentence. It's Exhibit A in the case against our main character, Meursault. A statement that's gonna follow him right to the very end.
So you gotta ask yourself, right? The guy commits a murder in broad daylight with a witness, and yet it's his casual, detached reaction to his own mother's death that really gets him into trouble. How is it possible that a feeling, or a lack of one, can be a crime worse than killing a man? To really get what happens to Meursault, you have to realize he's on trial for two very different crimes. One of them is against the law, sure, but the other is against society itself. So on one side, you've got the legal crime, shooting a man on a beach. Pretty straightforward. But on the other side, you have the social crime, failing to show the proper grief at his mother's funeral. And spoiler alert, it's that second one that society finds absolutely unforgivable. And look, this isn't just some literary theory. Camus himself laid it all out, plain and simple, years after he wrote the book. This quote says it all. Meursault isn't really on trial for murder. He's on trial for being a stranger to the rules and emotions that everyone else agrees to live by. He's being judged for the wrong crime. So what is the deal with this guy? Is he just a monster? Or is there something else going on? Well, to get inside his head, we have to look at the world through his philosophical lens. A philosophy that's all about staring into the universe's great, big silence. And that brings us to the core idea of the whole book, the absurd. Now, this doesn't just mean something is weird or silly. It's a very specific idea. It's the huge, unbridgeable gap between our desperate need to find meaning in life and a universe that, frankly, couldn't care less. Think of it like this. On one side, you have us, humanity, desperately looking for a reason for everything, a grand plan. And on the other side, the universe as Camus saw it, totally random, chaotic, and completely silent about our feelings. Meursault is a guy who lives every day feeling that crushing silence. So how does a person act when they truly believe this? Well, Meursault doesn't see himself as the driver of his own life. He feels more like a billiard ball, just getting knocked from one event to the next, reacting to things passively instead of making active choices. Which brings us back to the murder. When the judge asks him why he did it, he doesn't give a logical reason. He says it was because of the son. Now, to the court, this sounds like the rambling of a soulless psychopath, but it actually tells us everything about how he avoids taking responsibility. And you know what's wild? There's a real-world sociological term for this. It's called techniques of neutralization. It's what people do when they break the rules but don't want to challenge the rules themselves. By blaming the son, Meursault isn't fighting the system, he's just stepping around it, blaming it all on some outside force he can't control. Okay, so let's head into the courtroom, because this is where things get really intense. This is where Meursault finally realizes that the crime he committed is almost irrelevant. It's his entire life that's on trial. The prosecutor barely talks about the murder. Instead, he spends all his time putting Meursault's personality on trial, trying to prove he's a monster. The whole trial becomes less about justice and more about society finding a way to get rid of someone who just doesn't fit in. And what's the evidence they use against him? Well, there's not crying at the funeral, going on a date with a girl the very next day, his absolute refusal to just lie and say he's sorry when he's not, and maybe the biggest one of all, rejecting God. Every single one is a major violation of the social playbook. So why is all this so threatening to them? Because when Meursault refuses to play along with these social rituals, he's basically holding up a mirror and showing everyone just how, well, random and made up their own rules are. His radical honesty exposes their little lies, and they simply can't stand it. He has to go. You know, his detachment is so total, you start to wonder, is this just a philosophy? Or could there be something else going on in his brain? And if we look at it through a modern lens, like neuroscience, we get a pretty fascinating theory. The part of our brain that gets social rules, the prefrontal cortex, and the part that feels emotion, the amygdala, maybe, just maybe, they're wired a little differently in a guy like Meursault.
All of this brings us to the big debate that surrounds this book. All these years later, people still argue about it. Is Meursault some kind of hero for his brutal honesty, or is he actually a complete failure? I mean, you can make the case that he's an absurd hero, right? He refuses to lie. He lives his life based on what he actually feels, not what society tells him he should feel. But Camus gives us a much better, much stronger model for what a true hero of the absurd really looks like. To really see it, you have to compare Meursault to another one of Camus' famous characters, Sisyphus. You know, the guy doomed to push a rock up a hill forever. Meursault is totally passive. Sisyphus consciously rebels against his fate every single second. Meursault lets life just happen to him. Sisyphus creates his own meaning in his struggle. It's a night and day difference.
And that right there is the key takeaway. Being an absurd hero isn't about just shrugging your shoulders and saying, oh well, life is meaningless. No way. It's about staring that meaninglessness right in the face and choosing to live, to love, and to fight back against it anyway. That's a test that Meursault, for most of the book, completely fails.
But hold on, that is not where Meursault's story ends. Because in his final hours, facing his own execution, something clicks. He has this massive, profound realization that changes absolutely everything. He's there in his cell, waiting for the end, and he just lets go. He stops fighting. He doesn't find religion or some grand purpose. Instead, he finds something much quieter and, in its own way, much more beautiful. He has this incredible thought. The universe is just like him. It doesn't have a plan, it doesn't judge anyone, it just is. And by finally accepting that, by seeing himself reflected in the world's gentle indifference, he feels this incredible wave of peace and happiness. For the very first time, he doesn't feel like a stranger at all. And that's the question Camus leaves every single one of us with. It's a heavy one. If we accept that there's no built-in meaning to any of this, how do you choose to live your life? Are you going to be a billiard ball just getting pushed around by circumstances? Or are you going to be a rebel, like Sisyphus, and create your own purpose? Because in the end, that's the only choice that truly matters.